All right, mate. Here is week 11's report of 12 boots in 12 weeks. How you going? Welcome back to Bootlosophy. If we haven't met, my name is Tech. I acknowledge the TOs of Wajak Noongar Buja, on which I'm filming. Now, I'm reporting on week 11 of my personal 12 boots in 12 weeks challenge. If you don't know what that's about, go and check out the playlist on my channel called 12 boots in 12 weeks and you'll see what it's about. Basically, I have so many boots, over 140, that I cycle through, and I thought what I might try and do is limit myself to only 12 pairs of boots in these last 12 weeks, and this is week 11, and I'm reporting to you what I did this week. So it's now Friday night. I've had an extremely stressful work week with a lot of jobs being completed, and I'm signing off reports and I'm checking the reports written out by my staff. There were some crucial and critical errors in some of them, so we had to go back and redo some of them, relook at the data, and provide a different type of advice to our clients in their management restructuring exercises and their change management processes and so on. So it was an extremely stressful week for me, but finally it's Friday night and I'm going to report to you on what I wore in boots from last Saturday to tonight. So let's start with the boots I wore over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday last week. And if you followed this series, you would have seen my week 10 report where I ended up in Adelaide. So in Adelaide, I was wearing this pair, the Blundstone 1306. And I gave you the report right up to the Friday when I got there. So I wore this on Saturday and Sunday and Monday because it's a public holiday on Monday, which is partly why the week was so stressful. We had to do 5 days of work within 4. And this was worn by me all the way in Adelaide and on the trip back. And in Adelaide, we went all over the place, went to the Adelaide market, of course. I had spent Friday of last week in these, flying up to the APY lands and doing some work with the Aboriginal communities up there, which I couldn't film because it's a culturally sensitive area. But then I met my wife in Adelaide because to get to the APY lands, you fly through Adelaide. I met my wife in Adelaide for our long weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and was wearing these throughout. Really, really, really comfortable walking around in the city with these. Those of you who have it will know. It has a very soft PU and TPU sole and a very soft removable insole on the inside. It's an interesting boot, I think, because the shape with this sort of chiseled toe, I think could potentially be quite dressy, but the actual leather, as you can see, is what they call a distressed brown. So it's sort of patchy in various places. And what I'm finding is, particularly having worn this into the desert, and it was covered in a sand and everything, and I had to basically wipe it down when I got back to the hotel on Saturday morning. And I then found that, in fact, it dried out quite a lot because it's quite an oily kind of leather. But because of the conditions, it had dried a lot. And I think I'm going to have to condition these quite soon because I think this will take a little bit of greasiness. And I'm hoping that it's not going to even out the discolored patches that it was made with. Very comfortable boot, very comfortable in the sort of volume. It catches my instep very well. It catches the heel reasonably well. It's not particularly tight, but the softness and the grip on that leather, particularly on sandy surfaces, is beautiful. Yep. The downfall, I guess, is it's a heat-sealed boot. Despite the sort of storm welt looking thing, it's a heat sealed boot rather than stitched. So that means when it runs out, it's not going to be very easily resolable. In fact, most people would throw these away and buy another pair. At 200 Australian dollars, it's cheap enough if it lasts you for 5 or 6 years, which it will. I have builder friends who wear these, and it lasts them about 2 years in heavy use. So it should last me 5 or 6 years at least. Good boot. So the rest of the week I was back here in Perth, and I was going to the office from Tuesday to today. And I decided to wear 2 pairs of boots and rotate between them for the 4 days. The first one, this is a Parkhurst week. The first one I wore is this Parkhurst Richmond boot, Stitchdown Richmond boot, on the 618 last. It's in dark olive Roughout from CF Stead. And according to Andrew, he discussed with them how he would want this oiled and tanned. So it's a little bit more than a Roughout. It's actually imbued with oil in the tanning. It's turned out to be a very comfortable boot. I mean, the 618 last for me is very comfortable anyway. But this has become a very comfortable boot because of the uppers. They're nice and soft. They're Roughout on proper Roughout leather. They're not suede because the inside is that soft, full grain surface. It is also an oily Roughout. So you can see, I hope, in this light, it's at night, you can see, I hope, some of the sort of brushing out of the oils that are coming to the surface, and that's beginning to give it a good patina. A very interesting patina because it flattens some part of the Roughout nap. It raises other parts. And I'm finding that as I walk, I'm starting to sort of scrape, I suppose, the front end of the welt in the toe. But that's also creating an effect on the toe where if I look straight down, I'm getting kind of patchy looks to this Roughout. I find it's quite a difficult color to match because it's an olive green. It's a bit like a pickled olive, a browny green. There are hints of brown, but in full sunlight, it shows the green. So what you pair it with is actually quite difficult. And I've been wearing camel-colored chinos with this. I used to wear a pair of green chinos with it, but they got spoiled, so I had to throw them away. And definitely denim would go with this. But it's quite hard to wear this even as a smart casual in the office. So I had a difficult time of it going to the office this week. The other boot I wore, interspersed across those 4 days, is another Parkhurst. This is the Allen boot, plain toe, in Horween's dark brown waxed flesh. So it's a Roughout as well. You can see the grain on the inside, the full grain on the inside. And outside is Roughout, but it's very heavily waxed. So in fact, it gives it a very protective clothing, and some aspects of it, like here, it's still quite shiny in its wax. If you go back and look at some of my other reports, I did wear this very heavily one week, and a lot of the nap is starting to show off with wear. And this is just coming up quite nicely and showing a lot of the rolls. And where the rolls are is where I'm catching this boot, under seats and on curbs and things. So that's where it's beginning to rub off. Sorry, I'm looking at it and admiring it myself on my side. The interesting thing with these 2 boots, they're both Stitchdown, come out of the same factory in Portugal. The interesting thing with these 2 boots is I'm finding that the comfort level is a bit different. For some reason, these are a lot more comfortable underfoot than these are. They're made in precisely the same way. I mean, the Richmond, my understanding is it's an Allen boot and they stick a real toe cap on it. So it's the top that's a bit different. And you can even see, I think, you can see that with the addition of that extra layer, it rounds off the toe, whereas this is quite an almond toe shape. But the surprising thing to me is that this is more comfortable underfoot for some reason. They're constructed in exactly the same way. It's a stitch down. The upper is lasted, flared out, stitched to a midsole, and then through to the rubber outsole. So because there is no welt creating a sort of raised lip around the edge, there is no cavity in the middle, so it's not filled with cork. So what you're standing on is the leather insole onto the leather midsole and then the rubber. And there is some give. I mean, if I put my hand in, I can feel a little bit of a ridge where it's sort of the shape of my feet are going up. Not so much with this one for some reason. I can still feel it, but it's not as depressed as this one, although I've been wearing them roughly the same number of times. It's an interesting thing. If you look at my interview with Andrew Savisco, we discussed how we were talking about his New York boots, and I was saying that I found a lot more variation in his New York-made boots rather than his Spanish-made boots. And we then discussed why that would be. And apparently, not only are there variations on the same construction method in different factories, there are also variations within the factory. And I think you can kind of see why, because in the morning, the guy who's lasting, he's a bit stronger, he's pulling them harder. In the evening, he's getting more tired, so it's not as tight. And sometimes even things like on a given day, the person who's these leather pieces, once they're made, they have to be thinned so that when you stitch them onto each other, you don't have this double thickness of leather. Each part of the leather that's stitched together is slightly thinned down. So on a given day, the guy who's putting it through that machine might be a bit more aggressive and taking more off, and sometimes less. And that's where you get sometimes exactly the same model, but where it might hurt in some places and others not. Very strange. But I'm finding this more comfortable than this particular set of Richmonds. So, a fourth boot I wore, and because I wasn't at home very much, I was working long hours at work. I didn't so much as have something like this or the Wootens by the side, as I told you in other reports, just going out to take the rubbish out. I was exhausted. I was coming home at 8, 9 o'clock at night. But last Thursday, yesterday, I had the opportunity to come home a bit earlier. I got home at 4, and I was so stressed out by what was going on at work, I decided to get some fresh air. I put this pair on, the Blundstone brass boot, and went for a long walk in Bold Park, which is a 5-minute drive away, but a longish walk to get to, and then a long walk on the hill in Bold Park Reserve. It's a bush walk, and it's a very hilly bush walk. So it got a lot of aggression out of me. So this is Blundstone's version of a mock toe boot. Now, mock toe boots are mock toe boots. So think of the Red Wing Classic 875 mock toe, reddish leather wedge sole. Think of the Thorogood Classic mock toe, same. You could almost mistake them for each other. And most other people who make mock toe boots, even if they're copies like those coming out of Lewis Jet in China, but even if they're not copies, they look like the Red Wing 875. They look like the Thorogood mock toe. The Alden Indy, I don't consider a mock toe. It's basically a plain toe boot, and they stitch a decorative stitch around it. But real mock toe boots, where things are gathered up, whether it's 2 pieces of leather or just 1 piece of leather with a pucker, tend to look the same. Blundstone have been very clever. Apart from the fact that this is a commando sole, what they've done is they've rounded the toe so that it's not a straight up and then flat across like you would have at the Red Wing. They've rounded the toe to give it a little bit more elegance, I suppose you'd call it. And then that mock toe stitch, they bring it inboard a bit rather than at the edge. And both of those result in a boot that doesn't look as work booty as a Thorogood mock toe, and could quite easily be worn at work, in an office, perhaps in a different leather. This is in the Earth Waxy Commander, which is waxed suede, quite different from waxed flesh. Yeah, so you can get away with this in a quite casual, smart outfit. But I wore these out for the walk in Bold Park, and I've forgotten how tough these are. I mean, for Blundstone, which is not a P&W manufacturer, which is not a work boot manufacturer, for them to make this heavy, tough, and yet comfortable boot, I think has been quite innovative. I'm glad I got back into these because I hadn't worn them for a while. So there you are. This is week 11, 1 more week to go, and then I'll do a video. I'll gather my thoughts and then do a video on how I found the experience. It's surprisingly different to what I expected. So I'm looking forward to telling you that. So there you go. I hope you like this report. It's part of the series. Go back, if you haven't seen it, go back to the introduction and then weeks 1 to 10, and then watch this again. Next week is week 12. So I hope you click on like and then you'll subscribe so that you don't miss it. And then I'll do a summary after that. It's been a long haul and I cannot even imagine what the Stitchdown Patino Thunderdome would be across 6 months with one boot. One boot. Anyway, I hope you liked it. Click on like. Take care out there, and I'll see you again soon.